Okay, Be'ezrat Hashem. So we continue with Perek Yud Bet, Pasuk He. Machshevot tzadikim mishpat. The thoughts of the tzadikim are just, are justice. Tahbulot reshaim mirma. And the schemes, the tahbulot, the games of the weak of the Rasha, mirma is deceitful. It says the Gaon the following.
Mechila, a Reaper Suke?
Yes. Pasuke. Says the Gaon the following. The tzaddik usually is identified by his actions. And his actions are aligned with the halacha and with the ratzon of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says Shlomo HaMelech, but behind this rigorous behavior and this beautiful line of actions, we have to know that the thoughts and the thought process of the tzaddikim is also aligned with mishpat. Even their thought process is just, is shaped and almost, if we want, formatted by the derech HaTorah, by the kavanah of the Torah, the da'at Torah, to make the thought process aligned with the Ratzon Hashem. And not only that, but lo alei da'at, there's not even a havamina thought that would come to their mind that is not aligned with the Torah. The machshava, it's a very bold statement, because thoughts are thoughts, yes. But what Shlomo HaMelech says, that the more a person develops the Torah and applies the Torah and applies the mitzvot, and the more his mind is now shaped to think a certain way. So it's not even going to go and wander in thoughts that are not thoughts that are kosher, that are not thoughts of the Torah. So essentially, Shlomo HaMelech is going to reveal to us how does a person can purify his thoughts, right? So the more you have the Torah and you apply the Torah, and the more your thoughts get purified automatically and shaped to think that the thoughts of Torah. And that's how a person naturally cleans himself from negative thoughts or thoughts that are not aligned with the Torah. Yes? Why is that? Why is that? Because the thoughts are fueled by the behavior and the encounter of a person. Yes? A person, goes along in his day, and the day will dictate, how the thoughts are going to pop up. Yes, he gets a phone call, he walks on the street, he sees someone, he sees something, he smells something, whatever, a news, a situation, and that yields and creates thoughts in the thought process of a person. That's how a person lives when he is subject to the influence of what's around him. But when the person has the ability to be in control of his thoughts that's the muscle that he develops through the learning of the Torah and the application of the mitzvot. So his actions, yes, are targeting halacha, are targeting the mishpat. His thoughts are also thinking of Torah and mitzvot, yes, and therefore he's not exposed to the distraction. And if he's not exposed to the distraction, this muscle that is called the machshava, or the brain, yeah, is built to focus on very specific things and areas. There's this famous story of Chacham Ovadia, that once he was on the bus, and his wife was, he was on the bus leaving the Bet Adin on his way home, and in one of the stops, yes, his wife comes on the bus, and she waited. She sat next to him, and she waited. Chacham Ovadia arrived all the way at the end of his destination, to his destination in Arnov. And when he stands, he sees his wife. He said, "Wow, when did you come in?" He's like, "Wait a minute, I've been here like 15 minutes already on the bus next to you." Chacham Ovadia was so focused in his learning, or Psak Din, or his mind was so formatted to think a certain way, that the senses around him were disconnected from the surrounding. And that is the definition of Machshavot Tzaddikim Mishpat. The thoughts of the Tzaddikim, not only their actions, but the thoughts of the Tzaddikim are Mishpat, are just. Tahvulot Reshaim, right? But the schemes of the Reshaim, Mirma. Izleramot are deceitful. They're there to fool. Says the Gaon that even when the Rasha speaks words of truth, or sweet, or good things, if you know the person is a Rasha, there's tahvula, there is a manipulation behind. Even in those sweet words, even in those good words. And it's to take advantage of the person and get to his personal interest. For that reason, he uses the good words. The Rasha has educated himself to be so crooked and so twisted that every time he says something good, it's because it's calculated to take advantage or manipulate. What's the definition of tahbula? Machshava is a thought. Eitzah is an advice, is what you learn from that thought. Tahbula is a mix of many etzot, of many different ideas. Yes, that's the tahbula. Usually, who do you do tahbula? Who do you try to outsmart? The Yetzer Hara when you go to war. Okay. When you go and you fight the Yetzer Hara, when you go to war, that's when you have to outsmart. So you have to put all the thoughts together and try to see what the other person thinks, what the other army thinks, what the Yetzer Hara thinks, and you put together a plan to outsmart the opponent. That's tahbula. So the Rasha is so crooked that no matter what he will tell you, there's always a subconscious, if not a conscious, yes, twist and manipulation. Good. Pasuk Vav. Divrei Reshaim Erov Bam. Words of the Reshaim Erov Dam. They lead to blood. They're deadly. Ufi Yesharim Yatzilem. And the speech, the words, right? The mouth of the righteous saves them. In the same line of thoughts, the Gaon continues. He says the Rasha has always a wicked outcome and plan. So never get fooled by the good words and the sweet words that you hear from the Rasha. Because at the end, he wants what's good for him at the cost of the person's life. And whatever he can take, it doesn't matter how much he's going to hurt the other. The wickedness is so part of their heart and their behavior that it became completely natural. So unless you can detect, yes, the rish'ut, or you know that he's a rasha, you're going to fall for it because he's so kiviyachol genuine in the way he speaks and believes so much what he's saying that it's going to be very, very difficult for you to see through the game. Upi yesharim yatzilem. However, people that are yashar, their mouth, the way they speak, their honesty is itself a protection. Why? Because when a person is yashar, is straight, when a person is accurate, a person is honest, the fact his honesty and his purity is so blunt that the moment there is some crooked ideas or thoughts or words, that honesty detects it. I'll give you an example. You have somebody that's very, very, very neat, organized, clean. He goes into a room that's not balagan, but it's not neat. It's not perfect. Every detail he's gonna sense, and it's gonna bother him. Take somebody that's mevulgan, somebody that's lives in total balagan. For him, he sees he goes into a room, yes, balagan, no balagan, it's the same thing for him. Say the same concept applies for the yashar and the rasha. The more the yashar is yashar, right? If you have a ruler, and the ruler is perfectly straight, every deviation of a line, you can see it. Automatically, you see it. You sense the sheker. You sense the manipulation. You sense the twists. That's the power of the emet. When you're emet, the sheker, you don't need to work hard to see the sheker. You smell it instinctively. Another hidush the Gaon adds to that pasuk is very interesting. He says, sometimes you see Yesharim, you see Dovre Emet, people that are straight, and they talk to Reshaim. And you're like, why would you, you're such an honest guy, you're such a pure guy, you're a tzaddik. Why do you mingle with these Reshaim? Why do you talk to them? The answer is because when you have Midata Emet, you have the power through your Emet to influence the Rasha and influence his Sheker. Now, obviously, there are klalim to it, right? We've spoken about, who are you allowed to get close to and who you're not. But if you have the ability to impact, yes, your emet, your words of emet, will make the Rasha recognize that he's lying. Will make the Rasha be aware of the manipulation that he's doing. And that will awake within him a shame. Even without giving him Musa. The fact that you speak emet will make the Rasha question. Sometimes you need to be able to influence. So you, that is emet, need to be exposed to the sheker. Because you need to influence, you need to change the course of things. And the Gaon brings an example of Hushia Erki. Hushia Erki was a friend of David HaMelech. And he was a yoetz. He was an advisor of Avshalom, David's son. David sent him as a spy. We know that Avshalom wanted to kill David. And Achitophel was giving him all type of advice to try and go and go to war against David HaMelech. And there was an event where David ran away, and David was weak, was tired. Achitophel told him, now is the time to go to war. Let's run after David. We'll catch him, and we'll bring him to justice, and we'll kill him. Why? Marat b'malchut, because he's rebelling against your royalty. Talking to Avshalom, his son. That's what Achitophel said. Hushi, who was David's friend and spy, he said, no, Mapitom, listen, David is very strong. We don't know how big his army is. We don't know how organized it is. To go against David, you need the whole army. So let's put the whole army together. Let's get all organized. And then we go to war. Avshalom said, you know what? I like Avshalom and all his ministers and advisors. They say, Achitophel is too aggressive. And okay, but Hushi is smart. We're gonna go with Hushi's advice. Yes, Hushi at the end was Ish Emet, but he mingled amongst the Reshaim, yes, and was able to convince them through his dibur of Emet, because he was Midata Emet, he had Midata Emet, but from the koach of his Emet, he was able to convince all these Reshaim to do what he wants. To do what he wants. The Gaon wants to bring from that story the influence the Emet has on the Rasha. You understand the dimension? There's a new dimension here, is that your power of Emet makes the Rasha realized his rishut, and he's now vulnerable of himself, and now he starts questioning himself, and therefore he will want to listen to what the Dover Emet says, what the person that says Emet, the Yashar says, because that's what reassuring him. Even though it might not be the best advice, but the fact that it comes from the Dover Emet, the fact that it comes from the Yashar, from the righteous, we accept it. That's the power of the Medat Emet. And that's the Maaseh, that's how Hoshea Erki saved the life of David HaMelech. Now, the reality is that David HaMelech was weak, and he was tired. And if Avshalom would have listened to Achitophel, he would have probably trapped and catch David HaMelech. So what do you see from this? That when you have Midat HaEmet, the Rasha will listen to you even though your message might not be accurate. And this works because when the aura, the koach of the Emet awakes in the Rasha and exposing the Rasha his rishut, his sheker. So it shakes him up, weakens him, brings vulnerability, and therefore he finds refuge and comfort in the Emet, from the one that speaks the Emet, without taking with full clarity the actual content of the message. This is the edge, and this is the power the Yashar has over the Rasha. For that reason, sometimes the Yashar and the Dover Emet has an obligation to speak with the Rasha. Good? Pasuk Zayin. Hafoch Reshaim ve'enam. Turn over the Rasha, and they're gone, they disappear, they're no longer here. Ubet Tzadikim Ya'amod, and the home and the house of the Tzadikim stands. The Rasha, says the Gaon, and we've seen that in Psukim previously. Not only his plan at the end will not come to fruition, but it ends up backfiring on him. So not only did he end up not getting what he wants, but whatever pain he wanted to inflict on others will end up coming on him. So hafoch reshaim, when you flip hafuch, the upside down, yes, and that's midah keneged midah. You behave upside down with Hashem, then that's exactly what you're going to get. Then whatever you wanted for other, if you flip it around, it's going to come on you. The midah keneged midah. So at the end, the Rasha is his own biggest enemy and threat. to the point that they disappear. They're forgotten. The Reshaim are no longer. That's Enam. Lo nishar b'hem klum. Nothing is left. That's why Shlomo HaMelech uses the word Enam. Ayin. Ubet tzadikim ya'amod. But the house of the tzaddikim will stand. He says the Gaon will stand forever. Ya'amod lenetzach. If they ended up suffering, their children will rise and their grandchildren will rise. Meaning, you might think that you won a battle, yes, but the war you'll never win. The tzaddik at the end always win the war, and we see it in the history. Am Israel, Benisei Nisim, how Baruch Hashem, yes, as much as the goyim want to hurt and erase us, we at the end they disappear, they are forgotten, and we're still here, and we'll still Baruch Hashem. That's the power of the tzaddik, of Sheva Yipol Tzaddik Vakam. But what's important to notice here, if we want to understand the depth and the power of this pasuk, is that Shlomo HaMelech uses the word Ya'amod, will stand in the future. Don't expect to see the result right away. The result of the koach of the tzaddik and his sustainability, the sustainability of the tzaddik and his livelihood forever is seen in the future. That's the biggest proof, not in an immediate salvation. It's important to understand that, because that is an answer to the famous question, tzaddik veralo. How can it be that the tzaddik suffers all his life? It's not right. Yes, but you don't know what comes after that. Who is leaving behind? For example, I'll give you an example. Rabbi Meir Mazuz passed away a few weeks ago. One of the greatest Chachmei Sfaradim from Tunisia. Born and raised in Tunisia. His father, or the father of the Mazuz, is killed in Tunisia. Yes? They killed him. The Arabim killed him. Yes. And they wanted to finish with the Mazuz family. Right after that, Baruch Hashem, the family was able, they were kids, little kids, made their way to Eretz Israel. Now, it's true that the tzaddik at the time, you can ask, look at this, what, tzaddik, Rabbi Hamim Mazuz, what did he do? He didn't do nothing, he never hurt anybody. So this Rasha ended the life of Rabbi Chachamim, it's true. But at the end, look at what happened. Rabbi Chachamim today enjoys the limud of the Torah of thousands and thousands. That was an empire of Torah that was built by his sons. This is Ubet Tzadikim Ya'amod. You know, a lot of people, when Baba Meir arrived in Eretz Israel, the son of Baba Saleh, he was very, very poor. Very poor. He didn't have enough food at home to feed his children. So his children were fed by a neighbor. And people always kind of say, this is Zoto Rabbi Zoschara. This is it. Look at the tzaddik and he doesn't have what to eat. Kacha, you know. Zinachon, he suffered like this. But look afterwards, these children are feeding thousands. through their organizations, their mosdo, their peilut of chesed. Let it be Rabbi David, be Kutier, be Raphael, be Baba El-Azhar, to each in their own way, right? Ended up being the ones that feeds thousands and thousands of families. Bet tzadikim ya'amod. This is something we always have to remember. We cannot be short-sighted. Pasuk Chet. Lefi sichlo yehul al ish. A man is praised according to his chokhmah, to his sechel, to his intellect. Ve'na'av eled yehiyeh lavuz. And the twisted heart is going to be shamed, is going to be disgraced. Here, Shlomo Melech introduces another facet of the relationship HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with Am Yisrael, with humanity. He says the following: Lefi sichlo yehul al ish. A man is praised by his intellect. What does that mean? He says you have two people learning, chavrutot. One is known and he gives shiurim and he's out there and the whole world speaks about him and listens to him. And the other one is nichver kelim. He's not known. He's not doesn't look to be known, and he learns bitsniut. He hides. He doesn't show off. And in his ma'alot, in his level, yes, the hidden one is much greater than the other one, but he's hidden. Akadosh Baruch Hu, Chaim Tovim, Akadosh Baruch Hu will push forward the Torah of the Nistar, of the one that's hidden, to be exposed and praised for his Torah. Come Shlomo Melech to come and tell us that when a person has tzniut, when a person learns Torah beseter, when a person serves HaKadosh Baruch Hu to serve him and nothing else, that's the difference between somebody that does something quiet and when somebody makes a lot of noise around his avodah. Do I do it because I want people to know, or I need people to know? Or do I do it for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and it's irrelevant if people know or don't? HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes and looks for that tzniut, looks for that chokhmah, and will create situations to expose the power of the Torah that is hidden, so that people can recognize to its true value what Torah b'tzniut really is. What is called the hidden Torah? That's another facet to the interaction HaKadosh Baruch Hu has with people, is that he intervenes to push forward and expose the emet when it needs to show the value of the emet. Why is that? Because when the emet is exposed and to the public, it has now a different purpose. It's not just an emet that is done to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but now it's an emet that can influence others so that they can also go and serve Hashem. Why is that so important? Because what we learned in the pasuk previously, the emet is sensed by the sheker and brings vulnerability to the rasha that can have now an influence on him to do the right thing. At the end of Shalom, yes, he had the wrong intentions, but he listened to Hushi and he made the right decision for David HaMelech. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu will expose the Torah Temet that is learned Betzniut in order to have that Emet influence others. It doesn't stop there though. The crooked heart, the twisted heart, somebody that feels that has all these wrong thoughts and emotions, and he doesn't share it with anybody, and he hides it from people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu also will expose that person. Meaning, there is an intervention of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that bring forward two extremes. He will bring forward and expose the emet, but he will also expose the shakran and the rasha. Both are fundamentally important to the crowd. The emet we understand, and the shakran also we understand. If somebody is a rasha, yes, it needs to be exposed. Why? Because by exposing the rasha, you expose the threat. So now you know how to deal with him.
May I ask something?
Sure.
Why does it say Rasha and says twisted mind? Should say a Rasha is held up to contempt.
Because yes, why Shlomo Melech doesn't say Verasha Yelavuz?
Yes.
Why does he use the word Vena'avelev?
Yes.
Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to expose the root. The root is not the behavior, is the inception of the thought. It's where all that kicks in, that where all it starts. It starts in the heart. It starts in the crooked emotions. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu will expose those emotions. He will expose, because maybe in your behavior, the Rasha is impeccable. Yes, he does everything right in the eyes. His plan is flawless. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will expose the intentions, will expose the emotions, will make sure that the intention at its inception is known to all.
So that person lost the internal war with the Yetzer Hara. Because the thoughts, you cannot manage thoughts. You're not.
Yes. נכון? נכון. The Gaon takes this pasuk and brings a new, like another level of understanding. So what does it mean? Lefi sichlo yehul al ish. A man is praised by his intellect. If you recall pasuk dalet, we spoke about the three types of women. נכון? אשת חן, יפת תואר, and אישה משכלת. Says, לפי שכלו יהול האיש. What is the יהול האיש? The man will be praised based on his sechel. When will he be praised? In Gan Eden. In Gan Eden, the praise of the man is dependent on his intellect. And here, the Gaon introduces 3 punishments that a person experiences in Gan Eden. Forget about Gehinnom. When a person goes into Gan Eden, there are also levels of punishment inside the Gan Eden. And that's the Gemara. The Gemara in Baba Batra says, "Atid HaKadosh Baruch Hu la'asot sheva chupot lekol tzadik v'tzadik." In the future, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will make 7 chupot to each tzaddik. Rabbi Hanina says, "Melamed shekol echad nichva mechupato shel chavero." He's coming to teach us that everyone is getting burnt and shamed by the chuppah of his friend. Meaning each chuppah, your chuppah shames me, my chuppah shames him. And says Rabbi Hanina, Oy le'ota busha, I am scared from that shame. Oy le'ota chlima, I am scared from that exposure. Says the Gaon, this is what Shlomo HaMelech is talking about here. Says Nachon, he says, Lefi sechlo yehul al ish, le'atid lavo, we're going to go to Olam Haba. But our sechel that we bring with us to Olam Haba will dictate the type of Olam Haba, the type of chuppah, the type of exposure that we will have. And he says the same way we spoke about the 3 women, yes, there are 3 ways to learn the Torah. You can learn the Torah lishma, leshem shamayim. That's one way. If that's the case, your Gan Eden is orned and embellished and built with the 48 devarim she'atorah niknit b'hem. Right? You have 48 pillars of the Torah that hold your castle in Olam Haba. And this is tzaddikim yoshim ve'aterotehem al Hashem. That's what we spoke about, right? The tzaddikim sit and their atara, their crown is on their head. This is the crown. And then you have the one that says, "Alomed al menat sheikare rabbi." He learns because he wants to be recognized as an authority for the kavod. So keep in mind, the first one is the lishma, which is hidden. Torah lishma is hidden. You don't need to show it to anybody. You don't need to do it for anybody. You do it because that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. You do it for Hashem. The second one is for the kavod, meaning you're learning 20 hours a day. But the motivation is to be recognized. You're exposing that knowledge. In Gan Eden, he will benefit from his Torah, but he will be ashamed because that kavod that you wanted to gain in this world translates into busha, translates into shame in Gan Eden. You capitalized on the kavod in this world, so you cannot get it in Olam Haba, in Gan Eden. The third way, the third reason of learning, is lekanter. Lekanter is what? Is to argue, to prove wrong. You know, people learn so that they can. Tomorrow, when you sit with a rabbi, you do this, rabbi, this. You know, there's another Gemara that says that just for the pleasure of arguing. But you need to sound smart. You cannot argue if you don't know. So you're going to learn so that then when you say it, you can explain why you behave the way you behave. There's always that one in the shiur, that has to throw you like a bone to show you that you're wrong. That person in Gan Eden, the same thing. Not only that he is shamed, but others will point their finger at him. So you have the one that gained the kavod in this world. It's like you see it bechush, you see it in this world so well. These rabbanim, sometimes they're in the keilah and they're big shots, right? I said, and then suddenly when they go to Israel, they go to Gedolim, they enter, they become small like this. Makara. When you face it, when you're exposed to the emet, you realize how small you are. Yeah. So that's the busha in Gan Eden. So they capitalized their kavod in this ba'olam hazeh, in their keilah, in the surrounding. There were big shots. No problem. But when you go to Gan Eden, suddenly you're exposed to the emet, and you realize how small you are. That's busha. That's shame, right? Because then it's a shame. Wow, I can't believe I'm that small. The issue is that you're reminded every second lenetzach how small you are. That's the punishment of Gan Eden for the kavod. And the one that learns to argue, the tzaddikim are pointing their finger at him. They're reminding him, you wanted to prove wrong. Yes, this is what you learned the Torah. So that person is even more exposed. These are the three dinim that we are facing, we should be zocher of the Torah lishma, right, in Gan Eden. Forget about Gehinam. That has nothing to do with Gehinam. Meaning, some people, Shalom Neda, will live their Gan Eden, their Olam Haba, with status quo shame, with status quo exposure. That's what Shlomo HaMelech says when he says, Lefi sichlo yehulal ish. Each individual is praised by his sechel, by his intellect. How do you use your sechel? Do you use it lishma? Do you learn it for the real purpose of learning Torah, or not? V'na'avelev yihye lavuz. He says the one that is crooked, right? Yelavuz will be exposed. Okay? So if you're zoche to isha maskele, to a woman that is intelligent, right, which is referring to what we spoke in the last shiur, right? Then you're zoche to the 48th amudim, to the Kenyane Torah. Then you are praised. But if you use your intellect lo alenu the wrong way, or for the wrong purpose, yavuz, the payment is busha, bizayon, disgrace. So, any question on that pasuk?
Isn't it contradictory to in Gan Eden punishment?
Yes, you're right, but it's not a punishment in a sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is coming to cleanse you. Yes, but this is the Torah you asked for. So you carry with you the Torah you've learned. You've learned Torah that demanded kavod. Then if kavod is important to you, no problem. We'll put you the kavod. But you know what? Once you face the emet, you realize how small you are. Yes? Are you coming to argue? No problem. You want to argue? You'll have people that are going to argue with you. You're going to realize that all these arguments were that's what you've molded. You understand? That the nature, that's the DNA of the Torah you've learned. You learn Torah Lishma. You learn the pure Torah. That's what you're going to benefit. Your Torah in Gan Eden is pure. That's applicable to every mitzvah. Yes?
Yes. And okay.
Tov. And
Oh.
so we're gonna stop here because the next psukim are connected. So we finish pasuk chet, perek yudbet.
Yes.
Tov.
I have a motion.
Oh, Baruch Hashem.